Okay, so just complex numbers, simplifying complex numbers. We're going to start with the radical negative 169. That's going to be, so that's negative 169. That's the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 169. Now, if you put this in your calculator, that's actually going to be 169 is just 13 times 13. Okay, no, actually, so this should be 1. So I have I times, and then this simplifies to be 13. So my answer is 13i. Number 2, okay, is radical negative 216. That's the square root of negative 1 times 216. 216 divided by 2 is 108. 108 divided by 2 is 54. 54 divided by 2 is 27. 27 I can't divide by 2. I can divide by 3 times 9, which is 3 times 3, which is 3 times 1. Pair of 2's, a pair of 3's. So I know this becomes an I. I know I can take out a pair, 2. I can take out a 3, and a 2 and a 3 are left inside. My answer is 6i, radical 6. For this one, I have my 6 on the outside, negative 180. That's going to be 6, square root of negative 1, square root of 180. So I know I'm going to have a 6 and an I. 180 divided by 2 is 90. 90 divided by 2 is 45. 3 goes into 45 15 times. 3 goes into 15 5 times. 5 goes into 5 once. So I know I'm going to take a 2 out. I'm going to take a 3 out. The only thing that's left in is radical 5. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 times 3 is 36. So it's going to be 36i, radical 5. Number 4. I have the 5 on the outside, negative 128, x, y to the 4th, z to the 4th. Okay, 5, I have the square root of negative 1. This is the square root of 128, x, y to the 4th, z to the 4th. So I'm going to simplify all of this. I'm going to start with the 128. 128 divided by 2 is 64. 64 divided by 2 is 32. 32 divided by 2 is 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay? So on my outside, I'm going to have my 5. I have my I. Pair of 2's, take it out. Pair of 2's, take it out. Pair of 2's, take it out. I have an x, can't do anything with that. I have 4 y's. Okay, so I take 2 y's out, and I have 4 z's. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pair of z's here, z on the outside. Pair of z's here, z on the outside. The only thing that's left, I have 2 things left that are not circled, the x and the 2. Those stay on the inside. So now I go through and I multiply my numbers. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 times 2 is 20. 20 times 2 is 40. I have 2 y's. I have 2 z's. I have an I. And what was left in here was 2x. Number 5. 2x on the outside. Negative 512, x cubed, y to the 2nd. Okay, 2 and the x on the outside, I have the square root of negative 1, 512, x cubed, y squared. I'm going to show you the work for this one on the side. So I have 512. 512 divided by 2 is 256. Divided by 2 is 128. Divided by 2 is 64. Divided by 2 is 32. divided by 2 is 16. Divided by 2 is 8. Divided by 2 is 4. Divided by 2 is 2. Divided by 2 is 1. Okay. I also have 3 x's and 2 y's. I go through and I circle all the pairs. I have a pair of x's and a pair of y's. So that's not a great color. I don't know if that should be a color. Okay. I also have a pair of 2's. So on my outside, I'm going to rewrite this. This is 2x. I know I have my I. I have a pair of 2's here. Pair of 2's here. Pair of 2's here. Pair of 2's here. I have an x, this one right here. I have a y. What's left on the inside, I have a 2 here, and I have my x here. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. I have 1 x and 2 x's, that's going to be x squared. I have a y, an I, and a radical 2x. Six a b squared Six a b squared -1 64 a squared b cubed. And do my simplification over here. So I have 64 divided by 2 is 32, and you guys can go straight to it. You know it's going to be 8 divided by 2 is 16, divided by 2 is 8, divided by 2 is 4, divided by 2 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. I have 2 a's and 3 b's. Okay, so on the outside I have a 6, an a b squared, an I have 1, 2 2's, 3 2's. I'm going to have an a b, and underneath the square root, the only thing that's left is a b. I write that out. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 24 times 2 is 48. 2. I have 2 a's, so that's a squared, b cubed, I, radical b. Okay, so now we're on 2 powers of I, and I think that some of you need work with this definitely. So I have I to the 30th. The first thing I do, okay, I know it's even. So what I do is I take my exponent and divide by 2. So I'm going to rewrite this. This is going to be I squared to the 15th. I squared is -1, and -1 to the 15th is -1. That's my answer. 175. Well, I to the 175, I need to make it even. That's going to be, I subtract 1, 174 times I. I take my 174 and divide it by 2. That's going to be 87. So this is going to be I squared, so that's equal to 87. So that's going to be I squared to the 87th power times I. I know I squared is -1. -1 to the 87th is -1 times I, -1I, or -I. Those are your answers. This one, 48, all I have to do is do the 48 by 2, which is 24. This is going to be I squared to the 24 power, -1 to the 24 power, which is just 1. 169. Okay, well, I to the 169 is I to the 168 times I. 168 divided by 2 is 84. So this is going to be I squared to the 84 power times I. That's -1 to the 84 power times I, which is 1 times I, 1I, or just I. Number 11, I to the negative 6th. So whenever you have a negative exponent, you send it to the denominator. So that's going to be 1 over I to the 6th. Okay, now I simplify I to the 6th. That's going to be the same thing as 1 over I squared to the 3rd power, because 6 divided by 2 is 3. It's going to be 1 over negative 1 to the 3rd power, which is 1 over negative 1, which is negative 1. This one's very similar, I to the negative 8th. You rewrite it, it's 1 over I to the 8th. Okay, which is going to be 1 over, well, 8 divided by 2 is 4, so that's going to be I squared to the 4th power, which is negative 1 to the 4th power, which is going to be 1, and so your answer is 1 for that one. Number 13, this one's a little bit different, so I have negative I to the 24th, negative 1 times I to the 24th. So I kind of separate that. I still write the negative 1. I to the 24th is I squared to the 12th. Negative 1 to the 12th. Negative 1 to the 12th is 1. And so my answer is just negative 1. This one's very similar to I to the 67th. Negative 1 times I to the 66th times I squared to the 33rd times I, negative 1 to the 33rd times I, which is going to be 1I or just I. And that's it for those.